So the question was, give and explain to the class a personal example for each of the 4 key cognitive biases. So first is confirmation bias, which is when you make a decision, even when you're presented with evidence that your initial belief was wrong. There have been, I remember, maybe I've done it multiple times in math class where I was 100% confident that my answer was right. And the teacher took forever for her to convince me that I was wrong and show me why I was wrong, because I was like, there's no way I'm wrong. And even though she was like, look at this, and I'm like, no, but and I would not give up on my answer being wrong. I'm stubborn, and so I do have a lot of issue with this where I don't want to be wrong. And so for me, I could probably cite a bajillion different times in math class back in high school where I would be so set on that I was right. Or in English where I'd argue with my teacher and be like, I think this is this. And no matter, and they took a lot of evidence before I really believed I was wrong. The second one is representativeness bias, which is inappropriately generalizing from a small sample or even a single vivid case or episode. I would say for me, food has been a big one. I will try food one time and say this is disgusting and not want to try anything in that food group. And then I will go back and I'll try it, but I like it. But what I basically vastly generalized my single point of trying. I think avocados was one. I didn't like avocados until I remember it was cane sauce. I didn't like cane sauce at all, whatsoever. And then my dad was like, come on, you gotta try it again. And I was like, no, I've had one bad experience. I'm not messing with that ever again. That's disgusting. I didn't want to touch that. I think I probably broke In-N-Out sauce because it looked similar to me. Chick-fil-A sauce, I was like, no, I'm not gonna try any of those because they're probably all bad. And then I tried cane sauce and it was delicious. And so I vastly generalized cane sauce being bad off my one experience. The illusion of control, which is the tendency of decision makers to overestimate their ability to control activities and events. There was one time I was working Chick-fil-A, I was a team lead, and I was working the drive-thru, and I was kind of supposed to be running it. And I could have leaned on my other team leads that were there, even though I was in charge at the moment, and said, hey guys, could you watch this for me? But I tried to control everything, and I was forgetting to check on my drive-thru, and I was forgetting to look at my baggers and looking at kitchen and making sure they're getting stuff properly. And while we didn't fall apart, it definitely put me in a lot of stress, and we could have been more efficient. And it took, my boss being like, hey, you're doing great, but hey, why don't you get them and do this and this? And they were able to relieve some of my my control. I still was overlooking everything, but I didn't have to worry about as much, and I wasn't having to control as much. And so from that, I was able to take a step back, and I was better put in my abilities. I thought I could handle it all, and I couldn't. So there I overestimated my abilities. Finally, one was escalating commitment, which is continued putting in. Now, this one I had a really hard time because I've never had a situation where something's failing and I continue to put a ton of stuff into it. Although I do remember one time in middle school, I was in my engineering class. They offered like an intro to engineering class, and I was doing SolidWorks, which is a program where you get to kind of build things with different shapes and use different features to kind of mold things. It's really difficult, I found. And so I was like halfway into something and it was not working. And I messed up a step, like of course the very beginning that like wrecked the rest of it, but I would not give up. And I stuck on that thing for forever until finally I had to give up. But I continued for the next, you know what I mean? Like it was like 30 minutes to get there, and then I spent another 30 minutes just trying to get the next step. And I ended up having to restart the whole thing and go from the beginning, and then I was able to fix it. But if I had just cut my losses and restarted, it wouldn't have taken me nearly as much time. So that's my best 4 examples of the different biases.